clippers for that, right?
So we are live on YouTube now. That was the first introduction. So we can go whenever you're ready or at 7 o'clock, Mayor.
Well, I should probably go at 7 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe 6:58 if we want to squeeze it out. How's everybody doing?
Good.
I'm thinking the Bottle Depot is going to be the busiest place in town once the ban is lifted.
Yeah.
So it's not open, hey? Then someone asked me today. I couldn't find it. Okay.
I think it's shut down. But yeah, there's definitely a few bags starting to collect at our place.
You know what I would really like to see start back up though is like the chiropractor, the acupuncture, massage, like those kind of things I would like to see start up sooner than later.
I think we'd like to see it all start up. I'd like people to be able to sit in a restaurant again. I think that would be epic at this point.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be a lot longer than we expect, but
I don't know. I was just on a call actually with all the mayors again there or whatever else, and there was a little more optimism about looking at restarting the economy and how that works. He didn't get into a ton of details, but I feel a little more optimistic this week that it's not as far out as I thought.
Really? Wonderful.
But I'm so friggin' pessimistic. I was thinking it was next year. So somewhere in between next year and now, there's a lot of variation there.
Well, I don't know how much longer a lot of businesses can hold on, so hopefully
That's
things
tough.
are sooner rather than later.
It is a different world for sure.
Good job of the Easter parade, Rebecca.
Yeah, it was really good. You and Joy were a huge success there.
Sean, we need another dance video from you.
My ankle hurts. I'm too fat. I heard it on the ski hill toboggan and walking up it. Give me a couple weeks, maybe.
So what's everybody doing to keep themselves busy?
I've done more baking than I ever thought possible. And we are the Warman House is like board game capital of the world, I think. Tried a few puzzles on my own, a few home projects.
Councillor King, are you having issues with your audio right now?
A little bit of liquid meditation. How about you guys?
Introduced Dee to that Pink Whitney and she loves it.
I've just been busting my musical instruments out more often than usual right now, so
Nice.
maybe you should play something for us then. We should have like a Zoom meeting where we listen to you play and rock out on Friday night for an hour. I'd be in for that. I love live music.
I think you guys got better things to do than that.
Oh, hey, I'm about cleaning out papers and junk drawers and things like that. So if there was some live tunes I could sit and listen to, I'd do that. No worries.
Sorry, we're just going to test Councillor King's audio here because I think she's having difficulties with it.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
And it is 7:00 now.
Okay. I got to tell you, the biggest challenge in our house has been YouTubing grade 9 science and math and trying to figure out then how to teach that to my son. And yet some days grade 5 math is even tougher. So okay, so let's get started. So second rendition of our virtual meeting here. And for the near future, this is what we're doing. So we got an agenda in front of us for those that are tuning in to watch this live by the hundreds, probably the thousands, I'm guessing. This meeting will probably take a couple hours. And this is typically how we hold all of our council meetings. Just usually we're together. So we joke around a little bit and make some laughs here the way through to keep ourselves sane over the next couple hours. And we'll get into it. So first off, any changes to the agenda? If not, I see none. Motion to accept as presented. Thanks, Councillor Brandel. Any discussion?
Were we adding in camera?
No.
Okay. Then I'll just make it as presented.
As presented. Okay. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? By show of hands, that is carried. Okay, so first one, we're right into CAO update. Mr. Gordon Lundy.
Just a couple things. Staff is still staying healthy. There are a couple staff members are at home with flu and flu signs. Nothing more than that. As you can see, we're hitting couple of residents coming in on Fridays. Under the fire department, everyone has heard that Providence is on a fire ban starting tomorrow on all forest protection areas, and a OHV ban on public lands within the forest protection area. So we are looking at that very seriously. Alex will be.
Sorry, guys. Anybody else? I'm finding it really hard to hear Gordon. It keeps cutting out. Is anybody else doing that, or is it just mine?
Yeah, hard to hear.
Well, I can bring it closer.
Yeah, maybe do that.
So on the fire issue, Alec will be putting out a fire notice that we aren't gonna right now at this time put a fire ban on, but we will be monitoring over the next short while. Other items. The Family Resource Network, Gary informs me that we possibly might get funding for 2 positions, but that's going to come in the future. In my weekly teleconferencing with the Provincial Operational Center, they are recommending that all municipalities look at evacuation accommodations in case we run into any flood and fire issues coming this year. And so we will be undertaking that. And I'm open to any questions.
Go ahead, Councillor McGregor.
So if Gary's there, has he had the teleconference yet on this Family Resource Network funding and more of what it's going to look like, or will that kind of be in a report next week?
We haven't had the teleconference yet. It's scheduled for Thursday, And there's some contract pieces that we need to sort out first to move forward.
Okay, thanks. I'll wait for next week. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor King.
I just had a quick question about the Better Together Resource Center. How long is our lease left on that?
So our lease actually expired on March 31st. We've got an arrangement with the provincial government that we can use it for storage at this time until we know what the new funding looks like. We do know that the new funding won't likely to include any amounts for rent. So we're working on other options for that and looking at where else we can, how else we can. And we have lots of materials and furniture. So we're just using the portfolio.
Sorry, Gary, you're cutting out.
Sorry, hang on 1 second.
Sorry, Gordon and I are just sharing a microphone here. I just said that that building is just being used for storage. We've entered into an arrangement with the province to use it for storage on the interim. They're not charging us for rent for that. We know that the new contract likely won't have a lot of funding for rent for facilities. So we're going to be storing our equipment and programming materials there, furniture and so on. And our staff have moved over to the town office, and we're going to be looking at other ways to deliver that program. But for now, the building is just there for storage.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. As I see none, we will jump into the rest of our agenda. So first one, starting on page 3 in our package, is the assessment overview. And that's Mr. Schmidt.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Clear this time? Okay. So the purpose of the report tonight is just to give Council an overview on the assessment process and 2 key dates, the valuation date and the condition date. So I won't go through the entire background. It's fairly lengthy. But I will quickly just kind of highlight the first paragraph there, which is what is property assessment. And property assessment is the process of assigning a dollar value to a property for taxation purposes. And the theory behind that in Alberta is the ad valorem principle, which means according to value. So this means the amount of tax paid is based on the value of the property. And as we all know, property taxes are a primary source of revenue for municipalities. And property assessment is the method used to distribute the tax burden among property owners in a municipality. Each municipality is responsible for ensuring that each property owner pays his or her share of taxes. So with that, I'll just jump in to the purpose of the report, which is just the two key dates in the process there, just to provide some clarity there. And the 2 key dates in this process are the valuation and the condition date. And these 2 dates are legislated, so they're required by law for the assessor to comply with these dates. And the valuation date, the reason for it being is to ensure that all properties in town are valued as of the same date. The valuation date for 2020 tax year, which is this year, is July 1st of 2019. So it always lags a year behind. The condition date is the condition date is the as of date used to identify the physical state of a property for assessment purposes, and the condition date for the current tax year 2020 would be December 31st, 2019. So those are 2 key dates that the assessor uses in combination with a whole bunch of other information to come to his value on a piece of property. And with that, I guess I'd open it up to questions.
Councillor Brandel.
So when the assessments went out this year, it said something about that the assessments were as of December 31st. And in the report, it says that the condition or the valuation date is actually last July. So somebody asked me that and I couldn't explain it. So is that a condition date then?
So on the assessments that went out, so because it was a new form, we did have a technical error on some of the dates there that didn't pull through properly. And we will be advertising on the website that there was 2 key dates on there that just missed for whatever reason, pushed out the wrong date on our form. I reviewed it and the assessor reviewed it, so it skipped our eyes. So that was an error on our end. The valuation and the condition dates as they are on this report are the actual 2 key legislative dates that should show on that assessment.
Okay.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay. So recap real quick for those people that are watching. Assessment is basically a tool used to determine taxes. It's set by the province. And your assessment is based on what physically existed on your property in the December of the previous year, based on the value of it in July the previous year. Correct?
That's the short and simple of it. Of course, there's a lot more pieces to the puzzle.
You look at neighborhoods, and all kinds of cost of building. I get all that stuff, but the gist of it, easy. Okay. The second piece is that assessment is used. Just because we have a number of public people watching, and maybe some people go back and watch this, and this is a key factor that I find a lot of people miss in regards to paying taxes and how it works, is that there's this popular misconception is that if my assessment goes down, I will pay less in taxes, or if my assessment goes up, I will pay more in taxes. An assessment is a tool that's used to define how much each household pays in regards to taxes, because we all have a different varying amount. So knowing that we all have different varying amounts, that's based on basically what the value of your property is worth. So theoretically, a person that has a higher valued property will pay more in taxes than someone with a lower valued property. However, what happens is when we go to fund a municipality, we figure out what we need to do, the services that we're going to provide, and the cost to provide those services. And we're looking at the total cost to operate. And so theoretically, if the cost to operate stays the same, and this fundamentally is what we should be looking at every year and less in assessment, then even if your assessment goes down, you still pay the same. Even if your assessment goes up, you still pay the same. And people always say, well, that's confusing. That doesn't make sense to me. I spin it around in another way and say, let's say the entire town assessment dropped by 50% this year. That doesn't mean it costs us 50% less to run the pool, as an example. And so the point is that it will cost the same. It will cost the same amount to run the pool. So just because assessment goes down, we still might collect just the same amount of money. If everyone dropped 50%, theoretically we would all pay the same because we'd all share equally the same as we did the year before. I kind of lost it there. I was doing good and then I kind of went sideways, but that's my point there. Councillor Brandel.
Another note that should be made too is that the report refers to the market value sale. Taxes are different than appraisals. And in this report, it reads to me as a realtor like an appraisal, and they are totally different than taxation and the assessment, right? So when people hear that my taxes are going to be market value, it's really not that accurate, because the assessors use a cluster of homes and not straight apples to apples comparables. And people just don't understand the difference. So it's not really market value when you think of real estate.
Yeah, there's always that time lag behind that too. So I mean, it's not the sale price today, and again, it might not be the sale price as of that day, but it is a combination of the whole, and they use that mass appraisal to pinpoint it to as close as possible to that date there. And I think for assessment, people get really hung up on that, and it's really, assessment's relative. Just like you were trying to point out, it's less about what is my assessment and more about what is my assessment compared to everybody else's assessment. So if mine goes up, but everybody else in my neighborhood goes up the same rate as mine, then we're all still in an equal playing field. You really only have big jumps in your taxes if your assessment jumps higher relative to the asset class that you're sitting in. So then that's where you'd see a significant jump in your taxes. Other than that, most people over the years and through the data rise and fall relative to their neighbors fairly equally.
Depends on what your neighbor is though, because there could be a $450,000 house right beside an older mobile. So
Depend, yeah, Slave Lake's a little bit unique.
for the same, yeah.
Okay. Councillor McGregor.
So then I guess for us, when it comes to council and looking at assessments and if they go up and down and setting a budget, if we go down all the way through town, then this is where we need to start looking at our service levels and what we're going to be able to offer or not offer based on taxes. Because I understand that you know, it still costs money to run the pool. It still costs money to run the MRC. It still costs money to pay wages for our employees. But if we're having assessments that are lower and our taxes are going to be lower, then we are going to definitely have to look at our service levels and what they mean with the money that we have or are able to collect. Am I right?
Not exactly. So what I would say to that is that your assessment, if everyone's assessment dropped by 50%, it doesn't mean we would need anything less to run the town. And so what you're saying is, well, the value of my property went down, so we should crunch as a municipality. Think about it on the opposite side. So let's say everybody's assessment went up. It was a really good year. Everybody's assessment went up by $100,000 as an example. And those days are definitely behind us in Slave Lake. But the my point to that fact would be that it doesn't cost us any more to run the municipality. So we would just drop the mill rate and you would still pay the same even though your assessment went up. Right? So the point is that just because your assessment goes up doesn't mean you pay more in taxes. Just because it went down doesn't mean you pay any less in taxes. That's just the formula that we use to figure out how much everybody pays. And then the mill rate goes accordingly. Theoretically, as a taxpayer, you shouldn't be concerned about assessment or mill rate. What you should be concerned about is, what did it cost to run the municipality last year, and what did they deliver me for services, and what did they do the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, and what are they expecting to do next year? What are they trying to pitch to me?
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me. I'm just thinking in this economic time and at the way we're going, we may have to look at different services in a different way and a different price.
Agreed. And so then we need to look at our total cost of budget and say,
yeah,
people can't afford to pay what they paid in taxes last year.
Yeah.
But assessment just determines how much each person pays in that total pot.
Yeah. And then we would just look at our own budget time and see where we are at for what we have for numbers.
Agreed.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Other questions? Other comments? If not, Councillor Busk.
Make a motion to accept this report for information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we'll jump into page 19 in our package, Highway 88 pedestrian crossing. Mr. Roth.
So thank you. Good evening. Part of the 2020 capital plan was to build a pedestrian crossing across Highway 88 between Ellery Trails and the Charity Ball Diamond. So essentially linking the Sinclair and Charity Ball Diamonds. It also connects the Sawridge Travel Center and the Sawridge First Nation by pedestrian access. As you know, at that point in time, we were talking about different options. We've been trying to meet with Alberta Transportation to fine tune a design and work on those options. Partway through that conversation, the project was transferred over to an engineering section in Edmonton. They looked at the file and came up with some different requirements that we weren't aware of previously. So Alberta Transportation is going to require us to do a geometric analysis of the intersection, including a warrant analysis of pedestrian movements. And then any of those costs, as well as any cost of construction and operating costs for the actual crosswalk, will also have to be borne by the town. So that's a significant different approach than what Alberta Transportation had previously told us. Previously, we had a budget of $200,000. That's roughly what it was estimated that it would cost to link up the trails just to the highway, just because of the grade differential. You need to build a trail that's at a reasonable slope. And when you factor in all the extra engineering and all the other pieces that could be involved with it, that cost we're projecting to be approximately $500,000 now. Part of that we don't know until we actually get into the engineering, and so that's part of it, is that you don't know what you have to provide in terms of what level of crosswalk. If it's just painted lines on the highway and some signs, or flashing lights that a pedestrian would use, until you actually finish off the engineering. So there is significant cost before we even get started. So after looking at this, administration noted that that this wasn't a part of the council strategic plan, but it was part of the whole concept of making sure our residents have a better quality of life and that our pedestrians move across the highway safely. However, having said all that, we were recommending that this project be canceled and not go ahead. It's a significant change in what we were led to believe from it. When the project initially started. And so that was our recommendation, that we move away from the project and cancel it in the 2020 capital plan.
Okay. So I'd like to start on this one if there's no hands right away. First off, this is a project we've been lobbying to the provincial government for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, because there's some issues over there. So we're talking about Caribou Trail and Highway 88, basically at the Sawridge truck stop intersection there. And our friends at the Sawridge First Nation have reached out to us and said, hey, we need some help with this because we're not getting any traction. We've been fighting for this for longer than we have. And so we continue to advocate for that. We also obviously have residents of Slave Lake that use both of those ball diamond facilities, and they travel back and forth. And so it would be ideal to have some kind of crossing there. And so after years of advocacy, a year and a half ago, the minister said, yeah, no problem, let's get this done. Only stipulation is that we need to have somewhere for them to actually cross to. So you need to commit as a municipality to have something on either side. That's been chewed up in the government machine that goes around and around and around and around. And now they spit it out and said, well, yeah, well, we can do it, but you're going to spend some more money and do a bunch of stuff. I think rather than just give up on this, I think we need to go back and have some conversations with the ministry at the higher level again and say, hey, listen, you guys are suddenly changing the tune here. We're not okay with this. You said we were going to get this done. We waited patiently 18 months. And, I don't think we should just roll over and give up on this. I think we should go back and keep fighting. That being said, I will finish up by saying, let's not spend any money on this until we get it figured out. But, let's go get it figured out. Councillor Busk.
Oh, that was going to be my comment, Mayor Warman, was that, like I say, we have to go and do some more face-to-face meetings or whatever it takes to get our point across. But like I say, we've waited 18 months. We could probably wait another little while to get this done. I don't see this project as warranting $500,000.
Gosh, no. Other comments? As I see none, I would propose them. Councillor Busk.
Make a motion that council amend the 2020 capital plan by removing the Highway 88 pedestrian crosswalk project at this time.
Okay, discussion on that. Councillor Brandel.
I propose that we don't remove it, we just postpone it after we get more information.
Councillor King. I'm guessing a ditto.
I was going to say what Councillor Brandel said.
Yeah, I would echo those as well. Other discussion? Councillor Bust, do you want to amend your motion or leave it as the way it is?
Friendly amendment is accepted, yes.
Okay, so the council amend the 2020 capital plan by, let's just call it deferring the Highway 88 pedestrian crosswalk project. Gordon, would that work? Okay. Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. I'd throw another motion on here that council direct administration to send a letter to the transportation minister in regards to the frustration we are experiencing with getting this project completed. Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Gordon Lundy.
Could I ask that we amend it to deputy minister?
Sure. And I would suggest that you and I both follow up with some phone calls there and push some buttons here and see what happens. Okay. That motion's on the floor. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Okay, let's jump into asset management, page 22 in our package. Mr. Roth again.
Thank you. So as I'm sure you're all aware, asset management is a bit of a topic that's been of a concern in community services. Our assets are really what enable us to provide our services. So without physical assets such as a rec center, we can't provide recreation to our community. So we have embarked on this journey of trying to find out more information and to look at how we can plan better to have better information for the town in terms of our assets going forward. The challenge is that some of our facilities and has very little information in terms of detailed planning. We have great facilities and we want to keep them that way, but we also have a lack of information to enable to forecast and project what it's going to cost to operate those facilities in the future. And we see that as a risk for the town. Some of us within administration have reached out and we looked into some training and some other resources to help us along this journey. AUMA had a program that they had launched last year with some training, and we applied as on behalf of the town, and we're not successful because they selected municipalities within central Alberta to have a cohort that's close by in geographic nature. So we continued on. Some of us have been working through their course material on our own, just kind of reviewing that, just so as a background piece. We've also been looking at how can we look at our asset management. And there is really no set way of doing asset management. Lots of municipalities do different programs. They use everything from Excel spreadsheets to some very in-depth programs. We looked at some software solutions to help us. We actually demoed 3 different systems, and the preferred that we came up with is one that's provided by Dude Solutions, which is actually a company that we already use for some other applications, called Asset Essentials. And so Asset Essentials works to track basically every capital asset that we would own. So within a building like the MRC, as an example, we could track every individual heating unit, every pump, every piece of that building as to past maintenance and future costs to keep that facility running. The Asset Essentials looks at all town types of operations, not just within facilities or community services. And so operations was a part of this conversation, as well as fire department, and includes basically all areas of the town in terms of our assets. Asset Essentials also directly links into our current GIS system. So anything that we have mapped out in terms of roads, water, sewer, signage, that kind of thing, would already be readily be able to roll into Asset Essentials. So one of the challenges is if you do come up with a system that you want to use, the challenge is getting all the information into that system. And so Dude Solutions did offer us a bit of a turnkey type of approach where they would work with Alberta-based companies to come up with facility condition assessments, where they would come in, do an assessment, an itemized list of all our facilities, all our equipment, and help us put that into the system. And then part of that is not only just coming up with a list of equipment in each facility, it's also providing us information on the lifespan of various pieces of equipment. So we saw that as being really valuable. While they're doing that, they would also work on helping us refine our preventative maintenance. We already do preventative maintenance in most of our facilities, and they would work on helping us refine that and set up a preventative maintenance schedule. So in the end, what we would end up with would be a system that would track all our various building or all our various assets. I want to say building components, but it's far beyond that. That would include all the various components or pieces in that. We would be able to track costs back to those various components and pieces, and then be able to use that information to also project forward as to what future costs would be to operate that, including replacement costs. So that's the whole point of doing this exercise, is so that we don't have any surprises down the road when we're doing our future capital planning. In terms of being able to, looking at budgets, our capital budget did have an amount of $25,000 for an asset management solution, which was sourced from MSI. We can still use MSI for this project. This project would likely be bundled with another project together as part of the application, but it would still work. As part of their cost proposal, Dude Solutions did note that we currently use a solution from them called Facility Dude, which is a work order type of program. And they are giving us credit for that software licensing if we convert it partway through the year. So the total cost of everything with all the software modules, the consulting fees, the condition assessments, and some time to help us build the preventative maintenance scheduling is about $58,900. It's in US pricing, so that is converted to Canadian pricing as of the time of writing this report. Reason why this is coming to you now is that we're still connected and locked into 2019 pricing. Their 2020 pricing has already seen about a 5% increase. And it's our guess. It's really a guess as to where their pricing is going to go in the future, because of course the world has changed and the economy is certainly different. But one of the challenges, or one of the things that was recommended too as part of this, is that we look at staffing levels to be able to look at asset essentials. And it was recommended that we should have someone to look at managing and maintaining the data for us. We're not looking at that at this time. Instead, we're looking at working interdepartmentally, working together to make sure that it happens. But that really means we need to have a strong implementation of the startup so that we're all on the same page. We're all essentially operating and using the system the same way and entering information the same way. The actual owner of the system will be our facilities department, and it'll fall on to our staff there to make sure that it's maintained and kept up. So it is our recommendation to proceed with the full proposal that Dude Solutions has presented us. There are certainly other options. I mean, one of the other options, we can continue this journey, continue looking at other ways to provide the same services, looking at our assets. We can defer, and we can also look at continue to look for other alternatives as well.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions? I don't see any hands, so I'll start. Okay, Councillor Busk.
So Gary, with this society the way it is right now, with everybody being locked down with viruses, I know phone companies and stuff like this are tough to get a hold of anybody to talk to. If we go ahead with this, is this going to impact the rollout of this program if there's nobody there to help us mitigate the problems or work through the problems and stuff like this?
So I'm just trying to see where you're going, where you're going with this question. In terms of delivery, Dude Solutions is very willing to work with us in terms of working on timelines as to when we can go ahead. Of course, they're an American company and they would be doing a considerable amount of the work remotely. The consultant that would be working with would be a local company. We would make those arrangements to have those on-site visits whenever it's appropriate in terms of the physical distancing pieces.
Okay, I just was wondering if there was going to be a delay, like if we go ahead with this now, if it's going to be able to be implemented right away, or if we're going to have to wait for 3, 4, 5 months before we can get it into this. So.
Yeah, definitely. The plan is to start moving forward at some point in May is when they're looking at the initial pieces of the project.
Okay, Councillor Brandel.
I just wanted to clarify pricing. So it was $17,000 prorated this year, and then $7,000 a year going forward, not $59,000 going forward.
It would be approximately $16,700 per year. Of that, we already pay $7,000 a year in our operating budget for the Facility Dude program, so we wouldn't need that program anymore. So there is a bit of a budget increase in terms of operational costs, but what we're getting in terms of our software, in terms of bang for our buck, is significantly more. It's a pretty extensive software package for the higher price. I also want to make a mention that I didn't mention in my original presentation. We actually looking at the two other software solutions. This was actually the cheapest or more affordable software package. So that was part of our decision making. Some of the other software packages were considerably more money than this.
So Gary, the 16,700 is US or Canadian?
Canadian.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
So just a question here. So currently, with the process we currently have in place, does that meet the requirements under the MGA for having a tangible capital asset plan, or do we have to do this in order to meet the requirements of the MGA?
And even better, does this meet the requirements?
So the MGA just requires us to have a tangible capital asset plan, as well as a capital budget, and we certainly meet those requirements. The downside is that we certainly could have better information in terms of our planning to move forward. We feel that we have a lack of information in terms of knowing the lifespan of various pieces of equipment, and the challenge or the risk to the town is that there could be significant costs at some point in the future that we don't have clear data on when to predict.
Okay, and so if I understand correctly, because the one program we wouldn't need anymore, the incremental cost would be roughly about $10,000 a year from what we're currently paying. Is that correct?
Roughly.
Roughly.
Okay. And then is there any type of agreement, what their pricing will be in future years, or are we kind of at their mercy? I would just hate for us to get all this information into the program and then, they raise their prices, drastically or something.
Certainly that becomes part of the agreement. They don't have a definitive guarantee as to pricing in the future, but none of the software solutions that we've looked at have that. So that is one of the risks or challenges to doing this, is that all the software companies, we are a little bit at their mercy, unfortunately.
Okay. So I had a question. So we're potentially going to use this asset management software for our facilities. Are we using this for all town facilities or just the ones that are underneath your community services, Gary?
So we actually included in this quote, the facility condition assessment includes the government center building and the MRC, the fire hall, and the 2 operations shops. We were going to include the water treatment plant, but we know the water treatment plant has some other renovation work already scheduled in the future. So it would be, Kellen and I had the conversation that would be the time to start using it at that time after the renovations are completed. So basically it is majority of the town facilities would be operated and used for this, as well as because our water system and wastewater system already have a lot of their assets already built into the GIS program. That information is already available, and that could be incorporated into the system. So it's a full encompassing system. Second thing, or the third piece is that it also has a fleet management component. Operations is currently just using the Access database for fleet, and which they are managing and maintaining themselves. And we would look at rolling that over into this system as well.
Okay, so my next question was around equipment. So you've answered that, but basically equipment is not included at this time. You're just focused on facilities.
No, certainly the fleet piece is also a part of it. It's actually a fairly straightforward process to convert that over. And there wasn't a significant line item in terms of the cost, because it was actually, they saw it as a fairly relatively easy set of data to pull in.
Okay, so for $42,000, we're going to US. We're going to get something that is tracking all of our assets, above ground, below ground, and things that are rolling across the ground. And we'll have better data there on everything.
Exactly.
And ongoing cost is only an extra $10,000 a year potentially for this software.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that one makes sense to me. Councillor Brandel.
So what about capacity for staff, especially now with COVID? We have people working at home. I know you said it won't be rolled out until May, but we don't know how long we're going to be on this little lockdown. So wondering about capacity now and going forward.
So that will be a challenge, of course, certainly looking at our phase-in and our rollout of it. Certainly that's something that we will be chatting with Facility Dude Solutions. I think once the system is up and running, we do have capacity, knowing that we have to work together as various departments to make sure that everything is that we're all on the same page. In terms of rollout and setup, that's something that we'll work with them on. I know people have various degrees of availability right now too. So I think we would look at whatever staffing availability we have to make it possible for this to happen.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor King.
I was just going to make a motion.
Go ahead.
That council approves the proposal for an asset management system from Dude Solutions, Inc., including all modules of the Asset Essential software and facility condition assessments and preventative maintenance scheduled development on the town buildings at a cost of $42,219.77 US.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Okay. We'll jump into community recognition, page 49 in our package. Is Joanna doing this, or are you, Gordon?
I'll be doing it.
Okay, Chris, give her.
So thank you, Council, for having us. The purpose of this report is for Council to discuss and approve the Community Recognition Program policy. Just a bit of background, the Community Recognition Program was implemented August 30th, 2019. When the program was originally launched, there was no policy created to outline the procedure and criteria for the program. Earlier this year, Council asked administration to halt the program and a policy be created to have the program utilized in a way that it was initially intended to be. The information in the policy was gathered from other municipalities who have similar programs. The attached policy was created from the information gathered. So the options we have on the table today are Council accepts and adopts the Community Recognition Program policy, or Council requests the policy be revised and brought back at a later date. There is one area that I do want to bring to your attention, which is on page 56 of your package. This is Appendix 1, which is the criteria and the categories for the Community Recognition Program. So this is where anyone can be nominated for, and criteria of what you are nominating them for outlined, instead of just having it open that anyone can nominate. Now we have criteria around it. I won't go through them. I'm assuming you've read the package. So if there's any questions, Joanna and I would be happy to. Oh, I see Gordon raising his hand. So I think Gordon has something he wants to say too.
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Jumping the gun there. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If I can't, I will defer to Joanna to answer the questions as we work together collaboratively on this.
Okay. So we'll jump into this one here, and I guess I'll start by saying, so we have this program that we created. We're doing some community recognition. It really started from, we had actually a number of sports teams that had, had an elevated level of success beyond just our community. So we're being recognized at, potentially a provincial level, and wanted to basically do something to say, hey, you know what, this is amazing. Great contribution to our community. It's fantastic that you're representing our community, and just kind of recognize that level of achievement. Lately, it's grown into a number of things, and we had to go back and look at the whole program, because I think it was too generic that we were just kind of throwing anything into that pot, and because we don't really have some clarity around what should be in it or what shouldn't be. It became confusing for council and for people that were applying. So I did want to say, Chris, though, that I am concerned that if we were starting from that idea, is this still a little bit too generic? So like if you look at the Appendix 1 on page 56 in our package, and you looked at the bottom, the distinguished achievement, that makes sense. It's a higher elevated level of something. The sports excellence, professional achievement, those ones do. The top 3, though, I am concerned about. They are still a bit too generic, that they're not to that heightened level of something. As an example, community supporter is one. And so one, I will say that I know that Slave Lake, and I've said this a million times before, and I'll say it again, Slave Lake exists today because the amount of people that rise above what is expected and what is required to make things happen is exceptional. And that happens in so many non-for-profits. It happens with our Rotary clubs. It happens with gymnastics club and figure skating and boys and girls and all kinds of different things that are going on. I don't want to eliminate one, but my point is that the amount of volunteering that goes on in Slave Lake to make Slave Lake what it is phenomenal, includes hundreds, if not thousands of people. My point is then we're just saying that you're a community supporter and you've been volunteering. We could theoretically be doing 50 of these every meeting and still not get everyone. Is it that enough of a level to do that?
Well, and I think just to piggyback on that comment, that's why we did add that years of contribution may be a contributing factor. So while we appreciate everyone who's volunteering for the first time, we might be looking at someone who's been volunteering for the last 15, 20 years or the last 10 years, right? Those who have actually made an impact in the community over a span of time and not just a one-off.
Yeah, and so that's where I say maybe with that wording, instead of years of contribution, maybe a contributing factor, multiple years of contributing will be a determining factor, right?
Okay.
A little stronger wording so that we veer, it's not about not recognizing people, it's recognizing that this obviously takes time and effort and energy and money to do all these things. And we're trying to recognize these higher level of achievements and not just good contributions, which are still necessary, but realistically, there's a time and a place, right?
No, understandable. So we can edit that part.
Okay. So one of the other things, I guess, then is how do we, the average person that's going to apply for something like this or this, see this go out, is probably not going to read 6 pages of of our policy objectives and policy statement or whatever else. So the communication that somebody sees is like a quick little blurb of what we're talking about. How are we going to communicate that out? And I'm curious from that standpoint.
So from that standpoint, Joanna and I haven't gotten into it much, but I do have some ideas that I'm going to be bringing forward, which is because we have so many different categories, instead of just lumping it into one community recognition, actually do some communications around individual categories, whether it be arts and culture, whether it be the community supporter, environmental stewardship, professional achievement, sports excellence, distinguished achievements. So start doing smaller individual communications around those, whether it be, do you know someone in that category? Do you know someone who's made an impact in Slave Lake, who's been around for a few years? Let us know. We'd like to recognize them at a future council meeting.
Okay.
And then also we'll be putting it up on the digital sign. We'll be putting it up on our Facebook page, social media, and our website as well.
Okay. And some of these things too, I'd want to try and avoid duplication. So as example, when we're getting maybe some of these that come in for volunteer appreciation as something that's there, you know, we're already spending money and time and effort there helping out with the volunteer appreciation awards that happen annually or whatever else. You know, should we be directing some of that to that, so we're not creating something in addition to what we're already supporting? Does that make sense?
It does, and I didn't think about that when this was coming forward. I can say that maybe working with the Lakeside Leader and the Slave Lake Native Friendship Center in that capacity, when we're looking at that community support or that volunteerism, we might pull it out and just leave it for them, or we can work collaboratively with them to ensure that what we're getting is they can use as well.
Okay. You know, it's just like businesses. We have a number of businesses that do some fantastic work in this community. We recognized one of them through this program here a little while ago, but it was at the same time they're doing the business recognition. So rather than take that in, redirecting them towards the Chamber of Commerce, where there's, you know, a platform that already exists for this, might be a better effective use of everyone's time.
No, understandable.
Okay. So I'm happy to leave it the way it is with a little bit of change in wording there, but, you know, recognizing that the people that are fielding these incoming applicants, see if there's a better fit for them at the time of year or whatever we're doing.
Yeah. Well, even if we pause it for a few months when that community recognition program, the volunteer program is being run by the Lakeside Leader and the Friendship Center, and during the Chamber of Commerce Business Awards, maybe just stick towards the sports excellence around the communications around that part.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Other questions, comments, concerns on this? It adds a little bit more clarity, which I think is good. We need the clarity. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion on page 50 of our package. Councillor Brando makes that motion as amended.
Yes.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, committee minutes. So for the public that is watching, we have a number of minutes that are within our package. So we sit on all these other committees. There's a committee for airport. There's a committee for, you know, some of us that attend the Chamber of Commerce. There's committees for waste, protective services, and so on and so forth. Lots of the times these minutes don't come to us until after they've been approved. And so it could be a couple of months have passed. And so about a year ago, we changed the format of this a little bit. Rather than just specifically looking at the minutes that we're getting back, was to give each counselor that sits as a representative on those committees a chance to kind of give us a quick verbal update, so we have more up-to-date and accurate information. And so we're going to do a quick run through of those committees. And I just realized my agenda doesn't list all those committees. So I'm gonna have to try and do them out of my head, which is going to be interesting. Okay, so let's start.
I have one, Tyler, from February in my notes.
Of course you will. Joy is the note taker. So Joy, why don't you lead us through them then?
Okay, so the first one we'll start with is intermunicipal committee.
And we haven't had a meeting. That was supposed to be at the beginning of March, and we parked it for a moment. So we still haven't set a future date for that. And once we get a little further through COVID, we're going to need to.
Okay. Watershed.
Councillor.
We met on Thursday. Our staff are still currently working out of the office because they can do it while social distancing. All of the educational aspect for the children is now being made into online activities, and all of our outside activities for water testing has currently been put on hold. Our funding has come in, so we're good there, and it's just kind of wait and see like everyone else.
Any questions? I see none.
Okay, next is District Chamber of Commerce.
Didn't have a meeting.
Okay. Regional Housing, Julie.
Yeah, so last meeting, we were supposed to pass the budget. We had the auditor on our Zoom meeting with us, but we had some questions. There were some historical anomalies that didn't make sense to us. So we had another meeting with the auditor just last week, and we finally fixed those. So we'll have a meeting tomorrow, and we should be passing the budget status quo. We finally have heard from the Opportunity MD that they will not be pursuing the requisition increase to us, or decrease, I should say. So it won't affect either housing's budget or the town of Slave Lake. So that was good news. And the other thing that we're doing is we're doing some committee member recognition. There's 2 members, longstanding members of housing that have passed away now, and maybe names some part of the lodge after them. We had a couple meetings, and we scouted out parts of the lodge where we're going to put the recognition, whether they're going to be plaques or whatever, and we're going to figure those out. And then I had Joanna and Gordon go through some past minutes from 2007, 8, and 9 to see who the town of Slave Lake representatives were, to figure out who they were, so we can figure out long-standing memberships. So, we'll be having that meeting tomorrow too.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Brownell, any movement on our capital project there?
Nothing at all.
Probably worth sending another letter and asking about that one too, eh?
Yeah, I asked Lindsay that just before COVID kind of started crashing down on us all. And he said he was going to, but he has definitely had his hands full with the COVID at the lodges. So I will put another bug in his ear tomorrow.
Yeah, and confirm if the timing is right, then maybe we should get something off and say, hey guys, like what's going on here.
Sounds good.
Jay.
Next is Tri-Council Health. So I had 2 updates sent to me today. Things are evolving on an hour-to-hour basis. Currently, there are 0 active cases of COVID in the Slave Lake region. Hospital visiting restrictions are in place. They're trying to have the snow removed from the sides of the building as we have people that'll be visiting through the windows. There have been several community donations of drinks and PPE, and they can't thank enough, and the staff is very appreciative. As of today, you can get an appointment with your provider of choice on the same day. So I don't think that's something we've ever seen at the FCC. So that's kind of exciting. Thank you to the community for doing their part and staying home, keeping the COVID numbers low. We should caution that as the community, we need to continue down this same path for several more weeks, if not months, if we want to beat this. The clinic will continue to provide essential services as long as needed, depending on the surging needs. And a thank you from council for council support. Bryce, did you have anything from the other meeting that I didn't attend?
Yes, I do. So we met March 12th, so these stats are current as of that time. So the meeting largely was centered around coronavirus at the time, as everything was just kind of coming out and making its way into Canada. There were 3,292 patients seen in February, 180 of which were new patients. The clinic is now responsible for 13,514 people. The clinic hours at that time were Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. They will reevaluate going to 7 days a week when a 9th physician arrives. Currently, we are at 8 physicians. However, a 9th physician should be arriving by summer, late summer, early fall. Yeah, at that time, it was 9 days for a doctor's appointment, but you've obviously stated that has changed. It was 4 days for a nurse practitioner, and 40% of all patients were seen by a non-doctor.
Any questions for Bryce or I? Okay. Next is Tourism Society.
We have kind of put that committee on hold until the COVID is kind of cleared up.
Okay, library board meeting. So we had a board meeting through Zoom, which seemed to work really well. We still have our staff is working. They're going through the back door and they're going in there 2 at a time. They have a hygiene procedure. Our girl that works in archives is all her work needs to be done there. So she's been able to get quite a bit of work done, still coming in a couple days a week. Our next meeting scheduled for May, and we've got some information from like PLS, so the big public library, and that on how to maybe do some curbside pickup. So our board is very mixed on this decision. So we're going to give ourselves this next couple weeks to pan through some more information and decide if there's something that we would like to do that way. Everything is closed though to the public, and we'll stay closed to the public, and we will follow provincial, and we'll also follow the town if the MRC and the pool and that stay closed. The library will stay closed as well. The Smith and Flatbush libraries are also closed. But we're still doing work. They're still doing some online programming. They're looking at starting like an after school program with the same kind of things they were doing there and looking to start that. So that'll be on all the social media sites that the library has. And I think that's it for the library.
Okay. Questions? None? What's next, Joy?
Naming Advisory Board.
Haven't met.
Okay, Community Futures.
So all of our employees are currently working remotely. We haven't had a meeting. We have one coming up Thursday. No real updates. Business as usual. Any businesses that need to get a hold of Community Futures can get a hold of them, and that's about it. Yep, everything is business as usual.
Okay. No
CEC, so the Community Education Committee, the college is going through a whole bunch of transitions with people. So right now that committee is on hold. Of course, COVID has played a part in that now, and we'll be on hold. I don't foresee us having a meeting now until probably September, when the college gets their staff in order and we get through this isolation. I hope to have that back up and running. MPC.
Who's going to give the update? I had to step out for half of the meeting, so I'm not the best person to do it.
Yeah, we did the 5 reports that we did at last council meeting for the rezone, 3 for the school, and then our housekeeping one.
The downtown growing.
And the downtown, yeah.
Microgreens.
Yeah, I don't really remember what else was on the agenda. It wasn't very long at all.
So as we discussed all of those reports last week at our council meeting, there's probably no questions. What's next, Joy?
SDAB.
They haven't met.
Okay, waste.
We haven't met.
Okay.
Bryce,
Airport. Oh, sorry.
can we check? Councillor Pearson is the lead on there. It's been a long time since we've had a landfill update. We should check in and see if we can organize something.
So get a hold of Councillor Pearson at the MD and Alan, I imagine.
Yeah. We had some stuff going on with budgets and costs, amounts of waste and things coming in. Obviously, the big panic there is always that the amount of waste coming in is directly related to revenue. And so we've seen a lot of fluctuations in that over the last 18 months. And so it has a big impact on our budget. We passed the budget there at the end of the year last year for this year. And as we're 3 or 4 months in, it would be nice to see where things are at. Okay, Councilor McGregor.
Okay, so Wildfire Legacy Corporation.
We have not met.
Okay. Protective Services. We have not met either. Disaster Services, we're checking on that one as to when we're supposed to meet for that. And Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves and Northern Alberta Elected Leaders. That's you, Tyler.
Yeah, both of those were supposed to have met here in the last few weeks, and those got postponed because of the COVID thing. I will say on Legacy, though, we have had some discussions here in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we opted to close the facility and follow the same guidelines as we were doing with the other town buildings. So a reminder that the Legacy Corporation owns the Legacy building. The town is one of 5 partners in that, along with the Elks, the EMD, the Sarge First Nation, and the Slave Lake Child Care Society. So one big concern there to throw on council's radar is obviously that the daycare is shut down. And so to give you an idea there, a bunch of the revenue that comes for that building comes from the daycare paying rent in the neighborhood of 10 grand a month, as well as a portion of proceeds from the revenue of having events and things go on over there. And so the town and the MD have been cost sharing the deficit of that building. But like our other facilities, that could be significant in the fact that if we're having no events over a long period of time, it's going to be tough to recoup some of that revenue. And we're coming into a time of year where we had bookings and had to cancel. So that is frustrating. Additionally, the daycare has 0 revenue right now. And so, they're waiting on some direction from the province about how they're going to deal with a lot of their funding issues as they move forward. And we'll have to see how that's going to impact us, but, it will likely have an impact.
And that's all. Those are all our committees.
Okay. So a motion to accept those committee update verbal reports as information. Thank you, Councillor Busk. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Then we have the management task list in here. And so, we have went back and forth on how to do this, whether we kind of give a quick verbal update on these or just ask some questions. Knowing that Mr. Lundy is our interim CAO, I think let's just ask questions if there's any in regards to the things that are on here, rather than throw them on a spot for a detailed update on each one. I think a lot of them have actually been discussed tonight. So any questions in regards to the management task list? If not, motion to accept as presented. Councillor King, any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, so we got 2 things of correspondence. So the first one is a email that I forwarded off to Joanna to include with tonight's package. It's from Minister Dreeshen, who's the Minister of Ag and Forestry. The issue has been around that mountain pine beetle is obviously something that decimated BC and was a big contributor of a number of their fire issues there a couple of years ago. Mountain pine beetle is in Alberta. It is significant, obviously, in the Jasper area, as well as we're starting to see some strong movement in the last couple of years in regards to Hinton and Edson. And so there's been a big push from those municipalities to say, hey, we need help. We need help to combat this. This is going to have a significant economic impact on us as we move forward. We need to be addressing this. And so they've been as a province, Alberta has been advocating to the federal government for some help with this. I will say that, with 4 mills in our area, this should definitely be something that's top of mind to us. And I will say from my own knowledge and my discussions with other municipalities and whatever, there's mountain pine beetle exists in our backyard right now. So they found some significant stuff closer to Swan Hills, just south of us, as well as some stuff up in Martin Hills area. And so there's literally crews that go out that they hack down and burn these sites every year in an effort to try and reduce those numbers. So the correspondence is around the fact that the minister has sent some advocacy towards the Honorable Seamus O'Regan, who's the Minister of Natural Resources, looking for some help for Alberta, and is encouraging municipalities to basically also send letters requesting support. So there's no financial obligation to this, but I did want to present a motion to council that we send a letter, our administration draft a letter to be sent to the Federal Minister of Natural Resources in regards to our support for Alberta's request for funding in a partnership to combat mountain pine beetle. Any discussion on that? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Perfect. The next bit of correspondence was TransCanada Energy is doing some work up in Pelican Mountain with the meter stations going on up there. They're giving us some information based on their meter station that they're putting in, and letting municipalities know that it's happening. They had informed us of this previously, and are just giving up their update that things are progressing. Our last one, we said we had no issues with this. We encourage them to support and use local businesses as much as possible, and look forward to any jobs that this would create or sustain. So with that, I don't think there's much to add to that one. We'll jump into Mayor's Corner. So first off, got through Easter this weekend. I see that many families were committed to the social distancing aspect. Lots of virtual stuff going on, lots of small immediate family gatherings. For the most part, I think most of Slave Lake adhered to those requests, and I say most because I know that there's some that didn't, and that's always frustrating for me to see. But for the most part, Slave Lake has bought in, and I'm appreciative of that. A lot of excitement there in a town when you're sitting at home wondering, my God, it's like Groundhog Day. Are we doing this again today? What is going to be different? It was great to see Councillor McGregor and Councillor King there take an active role to drive around in fire trucks and spruce up the town. They're throwing eggs and chocolate around. The Easter Bunny was around, and lots of social media feedback on how great that was. So just want to say great job, guys. That was well received from the community. Had a call, Dr. Henshaw, who's not a minister but works for the ministry, as well as the Premier and a couple of the other ministers have been doing a weekly update. So I was on a conference call with them tonight, includes the mayors and CAOs. And so I actually had to hang up at the end for this meeting, but it went on for a couple of hours, but they were winding down. No big revolutionary things in there. A lot of calls from municipalities about, the long-term effects, how this is going to impact us. And although there's been a lot of supports for individuals and some supports coming for businesses, there really hasn't been a lot for municipalities. One of the things that jumped out was that, the provincial government made a announcement there that the non-residential educational requisition was being deferred. However, they are deferring collection of it because we actually, so to be clear, basically to run education, there's a portion of your tax bill that goes towards municipal taxes. There's a portion that goes towards educational taxes, which is then your cost of education in Alberta, and a portion then that goes to seniors and housing. And so although the town actually only keeps 1/3 of, one piece of those three pieces, it's obviously not equal all the way along. We're required to collect on those other two pieces. Well, the education one they're deferring, but they still want us they're allowing us to defer collection, but they're still expecting to be paid. which is an interesting concept that, hey, congratulations, all you businesses, you're saving a whole bunch of money, but hey, town, you're going to have to pay for it because we still need it. But we'll make the announcement on your behalf. So there's some frustration there. They are playing with those deadlines. So we'll see what that goes out. I talked to Roland here before this meeting, and we'll kind of see how that goes. He's got some conference call tomorrow to get some more education on that. More education on education. But I always say ideas are easy and plans are hard. So idea is great. The plan is we're going to pay for it. So I'm not sure how great that idea is. We'll see how that all shakes out. The other one obviously is roads. So lots of frustration on roads now. Snow is melting rapidly, and we're seeing temperatures above zero here for the next 2 weeks. So, I think snow is going to be non-existent here in the next week or two. Navigating the roads. I had one of the RCMP follow me all the way home from Boston Pizza the other day, all the way to my doorstep. They didn't stop, but I was wondering what the curiosity was. And then I thought it's probably watching me drive down the road and dodge potholes. So I will say that obviously in our own town, there's lots to do there. And talking to Calvin and his crews, obviously right now this week, extremely busy with getting water that's flowing to flow in the right direction and keep flowing for that matter. So a lot of backhoe work out there, steamer crews. I saw there we even brought in some extra contractor work there to help out and keep that water flowing. So great job to our team that's out there working on that. But I expect it, in the next week or two, we're just going to get a lot of feedback in regards to potholes and just to the community. We are on it. We're working on it. We have plans for it. It's going to happen. Bear with us. Just give us a little bit of time. That being said, it also prompted me to say, we haven't had any feedback from our minister in regards to, we had a bit of an advocacy campaign where we sent out a bunch of information. A lot of residents, we had a couple hundred residents that sent in their frustrations, used some of our pictures that we compiled, our library of photos that went on there. We've been partnering with that advocacy with EMD and our friends of the Sarge First Nation there to say, hey, listen, our region, our highways are in tough shape here. A reminder, things like the intersection at Highway 2 and Main Street there in front of Tim Hortons, we have no authorization to even go fix potholes in there, even if we wanted to do it for them. And so, we've been lobbying to say, hey, listen, these roads are pretty rough. We need some help there. At one point there, our interim CA, Gordon, was coming up the road, and I think he almost turned back. So it was good that his wife was driving and they made it all the way up here. But the roads are in tough shape. So it did send a minister a reminder there that we sent something here about 6 weeks ago. We haven't heard any feedback other than we heard that they got an extra $1 billion to do highways. And so we're curious to know what kind of impact that's going to have in our region. So we'll wait to hear some feedback on that. Did some work on the website today. So we were trying to revamp our website. Town website is part of an ongoing piece that is part of our contract with them. That is no additional cost, but we can give it a new look. And so Councillor McGregor and I were on with a number of our staff today for a couple hours going through our website, the things that we like and don't like. We'd also got the survey results there from a survey we did previously on that. And that was shared with council, and we can discuss at a future date. But that it's exciting to see that's ongoing. And the whole gear is towards making things easier to find, making it look a little bit easier to use, being a little bit more dynamic. So I'm excited to see the end product, but that will be a while. We're having another meeting in about another month. Homelessness, I touched on that real quick there last week, that we had a conversation about that. Barb followed up with me from the Friendship Center because they had a conference call on Wednesday. Nothing earth shattering there. We have yet to hear back from the MLA in regards to any provincial support with that. And so my message hasn't changed from last week. It's status quo. Our issue there obviously is around the fact that we do have a homeless population. And if they do show up at the Friendship Center, which is a facility that that group typically uses, and they have symptoms of COVID, how do we handle it? And so the message has been send them to the hospital. That's where they're supposed to go, and AHS will have to deal with that. It's not the ideal situation. We continue behind the scenes to see what we can do to make that a little bit easier and better, but not making a lot of traction there. And lastly, then the big fire ban stuff that came on today. the province announced that effective tomorrow, fire ban exists in the forest protection area. That's the official designation there. And that there'll be OHV restrictions, no OHVs effective tomorrow as well. And so a couple of things I will say with that, obviously there is, you think dealing with COVID is a tough monumental thing to deal with. Obviously dealing with COVID when we had to evacuate 10,000 people and keep them all socially distanced in a community somewhere else is I don't even know how you manage that problem. And so the province has been very proactive in saying, hey, we need to, knowing that, over 50% of the wildfires in Alberta are caused by humans, we need to do whatever we can do to limit what happens there. And so I can understand why they are doing it. However, I will say that looking around, a lot of people are using both of those avenues to keep mentally going here in this COVID situation. So a lot of frustration coming back from the community in regards to that. I did have a quick conversation with Alex today, who said, right now with backyards, because we have the ability within town limits to do whatever we want in regards to these things. So obviously right now we don't allow OHVs to drive around the community. We're obviously not going to change that. But we do have the ability to limit backyard fire pits, or say, hey, you still can have backyard fire pits. Talking to the fire chief, he emphasized that right now the hazard is extremely low. And so although in the forest protection area, you are not allowed to have fires within town limits, he's going to still authorize people to have fire pit or fire within their fire pit contained in their backyard. And so we'll see where that goes and how that goes, and see how long we can do that. And essentially we're going to have to look at the conditions within the area and determine on an ongoing basis what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. But right now, when there's still 4 feet of snow, it's probably safe. Other than that, yeah, I got nothing else to add for right now in regards to what's going on in the life of the mayor. A lot of it I think now is just kind of status quo, and we wait to see what's happening there. There is some, direction changing from the province, and it changes all the time in regards to how quickly do we try and move things back to normal, what has an impact, what doesn't. They're seeing countries across the ocean that are having success, basically jumpstarting their economy by opening, let's say, softening some of the restrictions to allow business to go on as normal, or get closer to normal. And so I was encouraged by some of the conversations today that feels like, although we have several more weeks of this, maybe it's not several more months. And so, a lot of this is changing daily. I don't have any inside information. I'm trying to hold anything back, but we'll see where things go. A lot of a status quo for the next couple of weeks, but I am hopeful that things are going to get better. And to save costs at Boston Pizza, we have everything on motion light. So if I don't move too much, the light goes up. With that, I have nothing else to add, and I guess we call it a night. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Busk. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Stay safe and keep doing what you're doing.